Good afternoon. My name is Christopher Beach, and I am a board certified music therapist, a NICU music therapist, and a certified trauma professional. And I am a doctoral candidate at Florida State University in Tallahassee, Florida. Today I'm here to present to you on my research that focuses on an examination of trauma-focused education and trainings within the field of music therapy. Over the last few decades, we have seen an increase in the amount of events that might alter the way individuals act or experience those certain events that might be considered traumatizing, whether it be wars or violence, marginalization, prejudice. All of these events are what might be considered traumatizing. And we've been seeing an increase of these events. And I wanted to see if there was any literature within music therapy that sought to provide education to music therapists. In 2022, National Council for Behavioral Health completed a study and found that 70% of adults and 90% of those in public behavioral health have actually experienced trauma. Similarly, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration in 2022 found that more than 2/3 of children report at least one traumatic event by the time they are 16 years old. And these rates are significantly high. And what makes it so difficult is that trauma can manifest itself through multiple avenues within the individual, whether it be psychological, emotional, physical, or even social. Can see behavioral shifts when someone has experienced trauma. And because of this, it makes working with trauma extremely difficult. The other thing to be aware of is that trauma is non-discriminatory, meaning that anyone and everyone can be affected by trauma. So naturally, I was curious to see where this fell in the literature and how music therapy and trauma coexisted. Much to my surprise, even though trauma and music therapy is a relatively new concept, there's still no prevailing framework that guides music therapists in working with survivors of trauma. And because there is no prevailing framework, even though it is new, this creates a need for us to examine just what is currently available. And that leads to this study. The purpose of the study is to examine the academic and educational opportunities that are currently available to the music therapist professional, like I just indicated. And I did that through 3 different ways: the awareness of specialized trauma-focused training opportunities, trauma-focused academic coursework, and then a overall assessment of the music therapist conglomerate trauma awareness knowledge. In order to complete this research, I created a 37-question researcher design survey, and I disseminated that to music therapists throughout the country, throughout the United States. In order for individuals to participate, they must be board certified by the Certification Board for Music Therapists, as well as have their emails registered with the Certification Board. That just made it much simpler to contact people and get a wider sample of participants. Music therapists for the study needed to live in the United States or in the United States territories to be included in this study. The study ran for a total of 6 weeks, and over that time, 3 reminders of the study being available to them was sent every 2 weeks. The Certification Board for Music Therapists sent me 8,602 emails that were registered with them. I emailed all 8,602 individuals, music therapists, and I received 958 responses from all 8,602. 945 of those 958 respondents decided to opt in and participate in this study, which created a 10.9% response rate. Initially, my questioning line for all participants fell in, "Are you interested in trauma?" Out of the 945, 88% indicated that they did have interest in trauma work. That's 781 individuals that were interested in trauma. Out of those 945, 51% of those individuals, which is around 452 people, indicated that they have undergone training specific to trauma. So we have this significant number of people that are interested in trauma, but just over half of all respondents that have participated in trainings. Of those 452 individuals who have not partaken in training, I asked them if they felt competent in providing services to survivors of trauma, of which 91 indicated that they felt their skill set was at or exceeded the skill level needed to provide services. 337 individuals indicated that they did not feel competent. That is a big difference between 91 and 337. I asked these people, what is the reasoning as to why you're not partaking in trauma-focused training or education? And this brings us to this chart that we see over on the right-hand side of the screen. You'll notice that there are three big categories. Lack of opportunity is 24%, time constraints, 26%, and financial implications, 28%. These three categories make over 75% of the reasons as to why music therapists are not engaging in training. So lack of opportunity, they may just not be aware of trainings or educations that are currently available to them. Time constraints, they can't take off work. They have family obligations that they have to participate in. Financial implications. This study was going on during COVID, during a global pandemic, and finances may have been a rough part of living during this time. So people may not have been able to throw the extra money in on a training. Of those people, I asked, what would you find most beneficial in a trauma-focused training? This was an open-ended question, so I sifted through all of the responses that I received and categorized them into 6 different categories. Trauma basics, trauma types, modalities and theories of trauma treatment, service user specific, engagement techniques, and professional items. This list is extremely beneficial to the music therapy world at large because it shows that people are potentially interested in trauma-focused research that deals with these specific concepts. For a field that is still growing in the amount of literature that is currently available, this chart is going to be extremely beneficial in increasing the amount of literature available. So switching gears and moving to the people that have participated in trauma-focused trainings and education. I was specifically looking for 4 different categories: continuing music therapy educations or CMTEs, degree and college level coursework, facility-specific trainings, and trauma certifications. And I asked individuals to indicate whether they have participated in any of these. I then asked them to identify as much as they could remember regarding the years that they participated in these trainings and how these trainings were conducted as far as delivery style. The analysis of these CMTEs, 199 individuals indicated that they participated in trauma-focused CMTEs. Year range for all categories was pre-1990 to 2021. So CMTEs, I had a range of dates from 2008 to 2021. And the majority of these individuals indicated having taken trauma-focused CMTEs in the last 5 years, so 2016 to 2021. Delivery style, 37 individuals indicated an in-person training. 88 indicated that their trauma training was online. And then 2 individuals indicated a hybrid style of training. And you'll see that these are underlined. Any number that is underlined shows that there was a significant difference between the categories involved. And I used a chi-square test and then a modified Bonferroni for all of my analysis calculations in this chart. Coursework. Respondents, there were 153, and the range of dates for coursework was the entire gamut, pre-1990 to 2021. And there was the only significant difference were pairings that included the hybrid delivery style. And similar to CMTEs, coursework was more focused towards the more recent years, just a little bit longer, starting in 2010 to 2021. 250 individuals responded that they've partaken in facility-specific trauma trainings with a year range of 1999 to 2021. And again, you'll see that there are significant differences between all possible pairings for delivery style. And then finally, certifications. 87 individuals indicated that they have certifications in trauma. And the year range was, like the coursework, the entire gamut. People have participated in certification trainings pre-1990 and then all the way up to 2021, with the only significant difference being between the pairs that include in-person delivery style. So of these people that have partaken in trainings, I asked them to break down certain categories and concepts of trauma and identify, out of all of their trauma knowledge, how much is dedicated to this particular concept. So I provided this entire list that you see on this graph: trauma resilience, assessments of trauma, causes of trauma, all the way around. And I asked people to look at their own awareness of trauma concepts and provide a percentage. And their percentage total for their entire graph could not exceed 100%. I then took the average of everyone's entry for that particular category, thus creating the collective education and training breakdown of music therapists. And you'll notice that trauma-informed care is at 17%, and it's the largest chunk of this graph. This should not come as a surprise. A lot of what is currently out there in the literature, even though it's still growing, is focused and centered on trauma-informed care. But when you compare that 17% to some of these other percentages, such as trauma etymology and prevalence at 2%, or the legal and ethical concerns of trauma at 3%, modern trauma at 2%, the separation between the percentages might seem a little drastic. So that might mean that there is a lack of potential education for some of these smaller percentiles of concepts. The other thing on this graph I want to pull your attention to is the music-based strategies and interventions, which comes in at 5% of music therapist knowledge, and non-music-based strategies and interventions at 10% of music therapist knowledge. This means that people working as a professional music therapist have more knowledge on non-music-based strategies and interventions than they do of strategies and interventions within their own scope of practice. This has the potential to lead for this lack of competency among the field. People feel more knowledgeable in scopes that do not include music, even though we've spent a lot of our later life doing education specifically in music. So what have I found out during this study? Overall, education and training opportunities specific to music therapists that work with survivors of trauma, it needs to expand. I believe as I was doing the analysis of this study, AMTA, the American Music Therapy Association, recognized 87 universities as having a music therapy degree of some level, whether it be bachelor, master's, or doctoral. 7 respondents who indicated that they've had experience teaching higher ed curriculum courses, 7 offered coursework specific to trauma. That means 80 universities do not offer trauma courses. For a field that has, or for a scope of work like trauma that has such significant interest among the field of music therapists, it would seem relevant that more coursework is designed to provide training for music therapists. Though trauma-focused trainings can be received throughout a lot of different avenues, it does not necessarily mean that trainings are built with the music therapist in mind. So I mentioned that facility-specific trainings had a high number of individuals. A lot of times, facility-specific trainings are geared only towards their particular population that they serve, which means it's not necessarily geared to help the music therapist. Take a look at some of the current trainings that currently exist within the trauma field. A lot of these belong to psychology or social work, and those trainings are not geared for the music therapist. We need trainings that are geared specifically for a music therapist and prepare them within the scope of practice that they fall. Without these types of trainings, there is inconsistency, and that might possibly lead to a lack of efficiency and then furthering this lack of competency among the music therapy field. There's a call in higher education to engage students through trauma-focused coursework. As I mentioned earlier, only 7 universities indicated trauma-specific training in their courses. Others did indicate that some sections of other coursework did incorporate trauma knowledge, but nothing specifically in-depth on trauma. And then going back to the trauma conglomerate knowledge graph, we need to ensure that we are not focusing all of our education on one particular construct of trauma. So trauma-informed care was at 17%. We need to ensure that our training is fully inclusive of all concepts relating to trauma work. And this only better prepares music therapists as they go into the working field in working with survivors of trauma. So in conclusion, there is significant interest in trauma among music therapists. However, because trauma is so new in the field, there's a lack of literature, there's a lack of education that is provided specific to music therapists. And that lack of education, that lack of research, though it is growing, it's still not extensive. And that can lead to the lack of self-perceived competency. And then finally, academic institutions, along with, it's not just academic institutions and other sources of education and training, they have the opportunity to improve access to music therapy-specific trauma-focused content to assist music therapists in increasing the validity of their work with survivors of trauma. And it would behoove the field of music therapy to jump in on this, because music is our forte. We should be the leaders in working with survivors of trauma and through music. And the ability to do so is there. We just need to jump on that and start building up the literature. So in conclusion, I want to thank you, and I hope that you have taken some valuable information from this quick overview of my study. And if you want to take a look at the references, I've provided you with a QR code here. Please also feel free to send me any emails, and I will respond to them as quickly as I can and give you some information. And if I can't, I will try and find you some information. So again, I want to thank you for your time, and I hope you learned something today during the presentation.